Hello and good morning. Today, we are here to talk about the future of leadership, and it's a great honor to be part of the TRA Academy and the initiative they are taking to make the world a better place, especially us. Today, we're experimenting with a technology on PowerPoint, which translates everything I'm saying into Arabic. So hopefully, what I am saying is being well translated. If not, we can blame the artificial intelligence of PowerPoint. So today we're going to talk about, for 45 minutes, elements of what I call the 12 traits of successful post-industrial age transformations, and really about the topic of moonshot thinking and 90-day cycles as a way to really pick up leadership. So very quickly, who am I? My name is Ed Capaldi. I sound English, but I'm actually Italian. I've been in the Middle East, well, Dubai, for 17 or 18 years. I worked originally with Ubaid Al-Tayeb from the Al-Tayeb family, and he was my mentor for a great period of time. Today, I help entrepreneurs evolve into this post-industrial age, right? And my way of doing things is to make you think differently, help you plan smarter, and deliver faster. So these are the triangle of what I try and do. So today I'm going to try and make you think differently. I'll be provocative in my statements sometimes, but it's there to help you trigger new thoughts. So my main statement is industrial age strategizing is dead. We know that because since the 21st century, in the last 20 years, company life cycles and CEO life cycles have halved. 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, a family business would have lasted 50 years, maybe 100 years. Today, no, the average life cycle is half. The average life cycle is around 16 years. That's incredible. So really, what's going on? This is why we're saying industrial age thinking is dead. What you learn at university, what you learn in MBAs, it's good stuff. But then when you look at the results, well, you have to question, are we learning the right things? And that's because we're shifting from industrial age to a digital age. Just like we shifted from agriculture to industry, we're shifting industry to digital. What worked before does not work today. But like any sort of transition, there are things of the past that are still relevant and things of the future which are still to be tried. Today, we're going to really talk about moonshot thinking. So I shall challenge you to think differently. I'll introduce you to these 12 traits that you saw on the first slide, and we're going to hopefully give you some good insights into a valuable tool set, which we will develop over the coming weeks with a series of 6 of these 1-hour sessions to help you better lead in the post-industrial age. All of you, whether you're a head of a department, an entrepreneur, or head of a division of a local government, what do we want to achieve? We want to be able to lead and succeed in today's volatile, uncertain time. Some people call this VUCA. But COVID, it's just another example. Rising prices of oil, governments, all these things happening around us. It's just the way it is. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. The industrial age was more planned, more stable. It was easier to do a 3-year plan. Today, an annual plan, why do it? If you think about it, how much time and effort do you spend doing an annual budget? Because you have to do it. Whereas if I also ask you, can you tell me what the world looks like in 4 months? You will say, no. So why are you planning for something that you also know will not happen? So we have to go to a more 90-day specific model. And because everything is a lot more volatile, we have to lead differently. So today, the customer, I call Frank, is at the center, not the shareholders. And this has been going on for many years, but the traditional way of running a business, traditional project management approach of strategizing, of delivering business benefits, that's dead. So these tools we'll look at over the next couple of weeks. If you just do them a little bit, you should see a 37% improvement. If you do it really well with discipline, that could be a 400% improvement. Now, that's not me saying blah, blah, blah. There's empirical data showing the new way. But the new way is very different to the old way, which is why not many people adopt it. So Bob Dylan, a singer from the US, once said and sang, "The times are changing." And I think all of us on this call today know the times are changing. The great thing of being in this country, Dubai, is we are led by a moonshot thinker. The great thing about the UAE, its roots were a guy called Sheikh Zayed. Sheikh Zayed was the moonshot thinker. So there are examples of how to do this in the culture, and we mustn't let those principles go. So VUCA is the new reality. Everything is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. But you know what? If you try to control that, you will fail. The traditional ways of running a business result in all these life cycles of businesses and CEOs collapsing. Chaos is the new standard. And if you try and put chaos in a box, you will fail. So either you can be like this guy, the chameleon, and change, or you can be the dodo. The dodo is no longer with us. Those companies, those CEOs are no longer with us. Kodak, Motorola, the examples are many. Or you can be like this guy. The choice is yours. But you have to accept the times are changing. The 21st century is very different to the 20th century. Then it was all about scale, scope, predictability, rigid organizational boundaries, command and control. Whereas today it's about agility and fluidity. Agility is something that adds value to the customer. Agility is not faster delivery. If delivery does not add value to the customer, it is not agile. It is fake agility, because you're just a better fool delivering more, faster, more efficient, but less effective. And these things about fluid organizational boundaries and entrepreneurial elements is what we're going to look at today. Even Einstein, bless him, said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. How many of you are like this? How many of us are like this? I keep on doing something, hoping for a different result. Well, that is insanity. So what's really changed in the world is this concept. So Copernicus was a guy in ancient Europe who said the center is the sun, not the planet Earth. And that took 300 years for that idea to be accepted in Europe. The same goes for this concept. Shareholder value. This is what we're taught at Harvard. The firm comes first and its shareholders, and the customer is on the outside, just like the sun and the moon. Whereas what we're saying is the new norm, the digital world, the post-industrial age, the customer is at center and the shareholder and the employees are around the outside. Now, the really smart people understand all my thinking is about the customer. To get to the customer, I treat my employees better, and therefore my shareholders get richer. Whereas the industrial age was shareholder comes first. And we can see what happened with Enron and all these scandals happening around the world, why that doesn't work anymore. I'm going to give an example of a very close friend of mine who's now retired, a guy who built a company from humble beginnings. The company was maybe 100 years old when he took it over. A Lebanese guy who left Lebanon at the turn of the 70s, when the wars were happening, went to America with very little and worked hard and built a company of 10,000 employees and 3 layers of leadership. That means each leader had roughly 700 direct reports. Industrial age thinking is command and control, all about management. The digital era is about leadership. That is why one person can lead 700 people, whereas managers can only manage a certain amount. Not only that, but his number one goal was profitability, and his total focus was on the customer. In fact, he's so dyslexic, he spends all his time with customers and employees. This is the guy, Salim Basul. He retired last year. And he never ever allowed core values to get in the way. So if someone didn't display the values of his company, you would leave. And the company's called Middleby. So pretty much 1 in every 3 cookers in the world are made and sold by this company, but no one knows them. But it's not just people like that, real examples that I'm talking about. This started happening in 1954. This is not new. The only purpose for a company is to keep and create a customer. Now, whether it's a government entity serving its population, service delivery, which is customer-centric, is the purpose. Whereas Jack Welch, the head of GE, who just recently died, but pretty much one of the great advocates of shareholder value, which, for the last 50, 60 years, has said the purpose of a firm is to make money. So most people who are CEOs or owners of businesses here in Dubai will say, no, the purpose is to make money. It's about profitability. And that's fine. That's the industrial way of thinking. But even the great Jack Welch said that was the dumbest idea in the book. So things are changing. Times are changing. And if we can't understand these basic concepts, well, the chances are you'll go the way of the dodo. As proven, empirical data of the last 20 years, company life cycles, CEO life cycles are half what they were. And this is what the 12 traits are about. It's about having a clear vision. It's about moonshot thinking. And then other elements we will talk about over this series. Network of teams, team which are self-organizing, radical transparency, mutual trust and respect, less is more. And before anyone says, yeah, but that's what happens in Europe or America. No, I've been here since 2003 and we're seeing changes here. And we're seeing this happening. And in the COVID example, many of these companies have been able to transition more effectively than those that are still stuck in the old command and control. So today we're going to look at these elements, right? Less is more, mutual trust and respect, self-organizing teams, and moonshot thinking. So what is a moonshot? Well, it's where the magic happens, right? When Kennedy said, you know what? Capitalism is better than communism, and argued the whole communism, capitalism thing. And most people started looking at it in very different ways and arguments. But when he said, we will put a man on the moon and bring him back safely in 10 years, he aligned the entire world against one ideology versus another. And leadership is the same thing. You are in charge of a company. Does everyone in the company know where it's going? Everyone in NASA knew the objective was in 10 years to put a man on the moon and back again safely. Now, many very intelligent, capable engineers said, that's crazy. We haven't even put a man in space. That's stupid thinking. But moonshot thinking is about dreaming and then making it happen. If it wasn't for moonshot thinkers, Dubai wouldn't be where it is today. The problem with moonshot thinking is it takes us outside of our comfort zone, right? But as a leader, it's what you tolerate, which is important, because what you tolerate becomes the standard. If you tolerate bad meetings become the standard. If you tolerate people abusing people, that becomes the standard. If you tolerate meetings that go over time without taking decisions, that becomes the standard. Stretch targets, stretch goals are not standard ways of thinking. Let me use an example. All of you would assume, I'm sure, that an elephant has a lovely big brain. I'm sure if I asked all of you, how many of you think this animal is stupid? Most of you would say no. So maybe you can. I don't know if we can put on this call right now, but flag up. How many people believe elephants are stupid? I say elephants are stupid because look at this. He's a big guy. This is a small piece of wood. But look down here. There's a very little chain. You can hardly see it. It's so small. Yet he doesn't break it. He must be stupid. And how can a great intelligent animal, they say, with great strength, not break a little chain like that? The answer is he's not stupid. He's been conditioned, like every employee in the industrial age is conditioned not to set targets that he will fail at, because if he fails, he will lose his job or lose face and credibility. So why would someone moonshot, in other words, set great big targets, if they know they will only lose their job or lose their bonuses by not achieving them? And this is the crux of the problem, moving from industrial age to digital age. Barry Page, Google. So we'll use American examples because Americans tend to market everything and there's a lot more information. But what he says is a 10% improvement really means all you're doing is the same things as everyone else, which means you're not going to change the world. You will not achieve greatness. So Sheikh Rashid or Sheikh Zayed could have thought like everyone else in the region, but they chose to think differently. They challenged the status quo and they created a moonshot dream-like atmosphere. And then they did something more importantly. They created an atmosphere, an environment that people could then step into. So great leaders not only lead with great, audacious moonshot goals, they then create the space for people to execute those goals. So Jim Collins, great thinker, said everyone needs a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's what we call BHAG. You can Google it. That's not writing BHAG. Try that again. BHAG. Jim Collins BHAGs. Big, hairy, audacious goals. Moonshots. And you know what? Now, you might like this guy or not like him. It doesn't matter. But he has a mantra. And it's, if you're going to think big. Right? So like him, hate him, doesn't matter. But that's a great example of someone achieving something, a goal, by daring to think big. So you can be a really good guy, like Sheikh Zayed and Sheikh Rashid and their people that followed them, or someone slightly different. But the thing is to think big. And once you think big, you set this top of the mountain goal, then you can build smaller think big moonshots to get there. The next 90 days, the year ahead, the 3 years. And because of VUCA, these can change. Doesn't matter, right? Change. But this won't change, and this won't change. So let's talk about some real examples. Subway, an Italian guy doing nothing in his life, long time ago, decided to set a BHAG, a moonshot, when he was being challenged by his friend and colleague. So he said, I will have 32 shops in 10 years. Now, someone who has nothing, 32 shops in 10 years is a BHAG, right? It is a moonshot. Today, that moonshot is 100,000 locations by 2030. Now, Subway has had a huge disruptive couple of years. It's not growing like it's always grown. And people are challenging it. People are thinking, oh, it won't survive. But I think it will, because everyone there is still focused on the 100,000 locations by 2030. Just like Kennedy, a man on the moon in 10 years and back safely. When you set a moonshot, which is inspirational and clear, and then have the right people, you will achieve it. This is why Dubai is where it is today. This is why Abu Dhabi is where it is today, and the UAE. This is why Subway will no doubt fix its current mess, because it has that clear goal and everyone in the company knows it. So I love this quote. This is by Sheikh Mohammed, and I see it quite often when I'm doing workshops. Impossible is a word used by some people who fear to dream big. Impossible is only possible until it's made possible. Many years ago, people thought no one could jump more than 2 meters. Everyone thought the human being could not jump more than 2 meters. And then one person did. And then miraculously, in the next week or months, many people jumped 2 meters. Because everyone was conditioned into thinking a certain way. And we need to break through that by daring to think big and dream big, and then allowing people to get there. One of my favorite photos. That would never be where it's at if we didn't think big. But it's not just the great leaders, the people that are in positions to say these things. This is a company here in Dubai. Right. You might have seen them or their technology in Emeril, or if you live in the Arabian ranches, I think it's called M+. But they're a technology, and their journey, their BHAG is to 1 million jobs a day. They want 1 million transactions going through their platform a day. And that keeps them focused. Here's another local company here in Jebel Ali. They want to disrupt the marine industry and become the professional #1 company in rib boats and amphibious boats by 2028. It's a BHAG. It's a stretch. They're not going to get to that unless they're focused. But everyone in the company starts believing it. And this is the key thing. It's propaganda. It's having a clear message and repeating it 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 until we are conditioned to start thinking big. And that means along the way, we need to set targets and goals to allow people to start believing that the impossible is possible. Because we can't just set this goal and then create an industrial environment where people are measured based on targets and fired. And we'll talk about that at the end of today. Intercoil, they're another local company, right? They make mattresses. Here's their BHAG. It galvanizes them, keeps them focused, right? So that they will get through the craziness of COVID and the craziness of fluctuating oil prices and all these other situations happening globally. So I want you all now to spend just 3 minutes writing down in your heads, what would be your moonshot? Yeah. How would you turn your vision into action? What's your moonshot? So on the chat, I think you have on Zoom, I believe it works. And if not, just write it down. Think big. I'm going to go silent for 60 seconds. What would be your moonshot? Inspirational and measurable, 10 years out. Just think big. If you had Sheikh Mohammed sitting on your board meeting this week and he said, hey, what's your big dream? What would you tell him? If you had Elon Musk join your board, what would you tell him? When your grandchildren are sitting on your knee as you're retired in 30, 40 years, and they say, Granddad, Grandma, that was an amazing thing you achieved. They too would know what it was. Kennedy's legacy, a man on the moon and back again in 10 years. If any of you want to share your moonshot, share it. So we can spend a lot of time devising a moonshot, right? Or it could be done much shorter. When Bill Gates and Tom Allen, or whatever, Paul Allen sat together right at the beginning, they wanted a computer on every desk. They made software, not computers. But their vision, their moonshot was to do that. And in those days, computers were the size of a room, yet they were focused on doing that. And once they had that in their head, the rest became easier. They realized they had to partner with suppliers like IBM. Right? They had to make it easier for computers to work. And they changed the rules. If it wasn't for them, Apple would never have achieved anything, right? Gates changed the world. Just like you can, but it doesn't happen without the moonshot. So reflect on these things, right? Great leaders achieve things by dreaming big and communicating that. When I first came here, people were talking about, yeah, we're going to have Dubai Internet City. And most people said, really? And then some other crazy idea of building a palm in the water. I remember sitting in the original Barasti, which was the size of a living table in the Minasai, and the restaurant manager saying, yeah, they're going to build something out there, a great big palm. Most people would have said, really? What a crazy, silly idea. But other people chose to believe. And because they chose to believe, they made it happen. Without a clear vision of we will build Dubai Internet City and launch in December, whatever the date was, 2003, I think, it would never have happened to that scale. Likewise with the palm, likewise with a moonshot. So it's your job as leaders to create that. I used to run an IT department in one of these local companies. Our BHAG was to become the best IT service delivery provider in the Middle East by 2010 at the time. We were an internal company. But soon, people started understanding that. It took a year maybe for people to understand what that meant. But my job as leader was to keep on saying, what's our BHAG? What's our moonshot? Until everyone started saying, we will be the best. And then the engineer would say, well, that means I have to be the best network engineer. The customer service person, I have to be the best. And then that takes us to the next thing is, how do I measure best? Well, very simple. Ask the customer. When we asked the customers, everyone said, IT is awful. If we could bring the whole department out into the desert, dig a sand pit and put you in it, we will, and we'll do it tomorrow without being paid. But we had to change that. And we changed that by setting 90-day OKRs. It's a miniature 90-day objectives. So you start off with a big dream, the moonshot, a man on the moon, right? Here he is. And then we say, well, what does that look like in 3 years and 1 year? That can be a stick in the sand, right? Doesn't really mean much, but it helps us plan. But then we look at the 90 days and we say, well, we're juggling too many balls. There's too much to do. The world's too crazy. I'm too busy. You know, I need 20 hours a day to do half the things. And we say, well, no, we need to focus on the 20% that gives 80% of the value. Of all the things I'm doing today, the 100 things, what are the 20% that will create the most value to achieve my moonshot? And this is how Dubai was built. Here's the moonshot. And now let's focus on the next part. And you know what? The daily huddle, what we call in Agile, the daily huddle, it's like the Majlis. A Majlis is where we come together, we discuss, we share bread, we talk. But it's really what's happening is the boss is making sure everyone is focused. If anyone has a problem, they can resolve it. But it's that rapid communication style that helps us get there. Even when Corona comes along, we can do two things. We can start crying, pack up our bags and leave, or just readjust. Okay, so 2020 Expo can't happen this year. Well, we'll just move it a year, right? Big deal. We'll still deliver an awesome event. And now we found, what do we have to do in the next 90 days to get there? So vision is one thing, the big moonshots, the big 10-year vision of what your company looks like. But as anyone that's ever tried to eat an elephant knows, you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. And this is where we come into this other system of moonshot thinking, the 80-20 and the 90-day plan. So this is Pareto. I'm obviously Italian, therefore I like to use Italian examples. But Pareto was the man who came up with the 80-20 rule. And I'm sure if you look at your company, you'll find that 20% of your customers give you 80% of your profits. I'm sure if you look at 20% of your employees, they give you 80% of the value. I'm sure if you look at your products, 20% of them are the ones that give you 80% of the sales. I'm sure if your customers look at your features and offerings that you offer them, they only use 20% of the features. So there's great room for cutting. In fact, most people say, know what to stop doing is more important than knowing what to start doing. Stop is waste, what the Japanese call muda. Yeah, anyone familiar with lean? Muda is anything that does not give value to the customer. So as we build these agile buildings, agile corporations, the check is, am I creating value for the customer? And the way we do that is by saying, as measured by. So industrial age is all about output, not outcome. And we're going to talk about output versus outcome next. But is it better to measure outcome or output? An output would be, we shall produce 4,000 mattresses this week. An output would be, I met 32 customers. An output would be, I handled 300 customer calls. That's meaningless. It's a useless number. It has nothing to do with results. As measured by is a very powerful terminology. So before we do that, let's go back to the world of software, which is driving this digital revolution. This comes from MIT. And because strategy can only capture a company's best thinking at a given point in time, strategy, like software, needs to be refined and improved as people gain and distribute new expertise and new knowledge. Given this reality, sound strategic development processes should enable a company to create and adapt strategy quickly and iteratively, and allocate resources in continuously changing environments. So COVID's happened, big deal. Readjust your allocation of resources. And we do that by setting 90-day targets as opposed to annual. And this is the subject to close today's conversation. Objectives and key results. Many of you probably still use KPIs and the dreaded KRAs, right? Fabulous. But let's face it, there's a much better way to run a company, right? And that's been proven, again, not by me saying blah, blah, blah. When you look at the best run companies, more and more of them are using management by objectives of OKRs, not the older system of KRAs and KPIs. But what's the difference? It's very simple. Numbers are not inspiring. Numbers mean nothing to the generation X or generation M or whatever, generation Y, whatever there is today. People need inspiring goals. So the objective is your propaganda language, and they're always qualitative. And they're backed up by key results, which are quantitative. Build Dubai Internet City as measured by maybe 10 international tech companies have signed office space worth $10 million. Is quantitative key results. So objective, build Dubai Internet City as measured by 20 companies investing $20 million. 500 square feet of building ready, as opposed to less blah, blah, blah. So OKRs are used to focus a group or an individual on a big, bold goal. The objective in a 90-day is your moonshot. It's your propaganda. It's your we will achieve anything objective. The key results tell you it's been done, but done with zero ambiguity. And then that becomes a part of the system of your daily, weekly sessions. And the way it's done is very simple. I will, as measured by. And this is one thing I never let a client get away with. An objective will always have someone writing it. Why is this powerful? So I come from the Mediterranean. Mediterranean cultures, Arab cultures, and Indian cultures have one thing in common: face. None of them like to lose face. Americans and Northern Europeans don't really care about this, right? But a lot of people will not do something if it means losing face. So when you write an objective and you are forced to write it this way, Ed will do something as measured by. It becomes very powerful because I'm owning this. It's not my boss telling me what to do. I have just written, I will. And because OKRs are then published so everyone can see them, the transparency of the model, it forces greater accountability. And because it's been written in very clear metrics, the boss or me or my colleagues can now have a little debate before signing it off. Here are some examples. These will be shared afterwards. A company one could be make the company profitable. That's a nice inspirational objective. And that means we have 3 measures. Now, objectives and key results always have 3 key results, maximum 5, to tell you objective has been done. Always. And therefore, that means it's then set up with a cross-functional team. OKRs are not siloed. They fit into a bigger picture. So to produce a website, we'd need people from marketing, people from sales, people from distribution, because if it's an e-commerce site and someone buys a hand sanitizer spray, it then has to be fulfilled. So to produce a website is not the domain of IT or marketing. It's going to be a cross-functional team. The different key results will tell you who's required in that cross-functional team. So slowly you start breaking the silos of traditional companies so that you can end up like Salim's company, 700 direct reports. So key is playing it safe never results in a breakthrough. This is why great companies set ambitious goals, BHAGs, moonshots, North Stars. They set them because that's the way you get to big thinking and problem solving. But they do not tie them then to performance measurement. So a new way is needed to survive and to win, right? It's this approach that we talk about, where we set a clear vision, a BHAG, a 10-year moonshot, right? And everyone can see it and understand it. And then we build a mechanism of 90-day cycles to make sure they are delivered. They're always there to give the customer delight, not by doing what the customer says, by understanding the customer so well, you develop product and services they actually want and will pay more for. There's no such thing as a commodity market. That's just weak strategy. That's all it is. If your sales force are complaining about pricing and wanting bigger discounts, it's simply because you have not differentiated yourself in the eyes of the customer to command a premium price. You should always be more expensive than the customer, than your competition, because that tells you have actually devised proper strategy. Whether it's a business model, whether it's a value proposition, it doesn't matter. But the starting point is setting a dream that people can buy into. And when you start thinking like this, you'll start questioning the purpose of having silos. With cross-functional teams and big, ambitious goals, I hope you would then consider dropping performance management. Performance management. How many of you have performance management systems in your organizations? Probably most of you. So here's the thing. It's a wonderful topic, performance management systems. So how many of you ask yourself, how has this performance management system increased the performance of my company year to date? Directly, cleanly improved performance. And I bet none of you will be able to answer that question statistically, which begs the question, why are you doing it in the first place? Oh, I know, because it's industrial age and everyone does it. But everyone knows, apart from HR, better known as human remains, and CEOs, that everyone hates that. How many hours do you spend in management time doing these reviews, which are often fudged and hated, when those hours could be spent delivering product to customers better, smarter? So behind all of this way of thinking are radical different ways of running a business, which is why we're saying digital transformation isn't just digitalizing things. That's what we call automation. Digitalization is the change from industrial age thinking to the digital way of thinking. And command and control, where you are the boss and the boss tells you what to do, fails because we live in this VUCA reality. The world is too complex, too volatile, too ambiguous, too uncertain to leave the decision taking to one person. Great leaders surround themselves with great people. Those great people surround themselves with great teams. They set great visions, great BHAGs, and leave it to the team to self-organize and get the job done. But they only do that, as we shall see in the next workshop, by making sure measurements and objectives are clear. Very clear 90-day objectives, very clear measurements of output, of outcome, not output. And the key, therefore, is knowing what to measure so you can let go and know the team is delivering great value. And this is the key element of there, because ultimately one thing never changes, and that is the art and science of strategy, which is the allocation of resources. These could be people, it could be your money, or your assets. Right? It could be a building, it could be a computer, it could be whatever. Every 90 days, thinking how to best allocate these resources to achieve results, not KPIs, results. Results as measured by OKRs, very clear results of impact, not output. Right? And the process takes time. The first time you do a 90-day moonshot system, it will fail. But that's the point. You learn and you improve it. And over time, you create an environment which is moonshot thinking, not output thinking. And coming back to the performance measurement thing, and I'll finish on this statement. If you want the best out of your team, you have to make them think out of the box. They have to be moonshot thinkers. But if you're rewarding them on what they produce as individuals, they will never, ever, ever 10x think, because they know 10x thinking never achieves the numbers being set. So your key result as a 10x is to increase sales from 20,000 to 40,000, and your people don't achieve that, and you penalize them, they will never think about such a moonshot. They will always set goals and targets which they are feeling safe in. Coming back to safety, condition thinking. If you therefore reward people on this, they will never ever think 10x, because they will use that way of thinking, because that money comes back to feeding their family, setting their kids to school, buying a new car, whether it's a Ferrari or a car for the grandmother. They will never stretch themselves, because the system of performance management is industrial aged, set about KPIs, whereas here we're thinking about moonshot thinking and OKRs. And there's a huge body of knowledge out there, but it's the mindset behind it which is key. Okay, so I thought what we can do for the last 15 minutes is maybe ask some of those questions, which we have prepared, and if the system allows, this is my first time on the platform, to maybe field some questions on the chat. I'll leave it with this slide here. Big moonshot, followed by the 90-day moonshot. Big moonshot, put a man on the moon in 10 years, and then 90-day sprints or races, which are very clear in what they will deliver as results, outcomes, not outputs, with inspirational moonshot words. Okay, so that's the presentation done. And now we can do some of the questions. I suppose the best thing would be maybe for me to actually stop the slideshow, or Mohammed, what should we do now? Okay, good. So key thing here, while we're waiting for some other questions, is it's a mindset of how to lead in a post-industrial age. The industrial age was all about prediction. It was easy to do plans, and it was easy to do command and control. But today, most people have a lot more education than they used to have. People have a lot more experiences than they used to have. There's Google that helps you find anything you want. Therefore, we've democratized knowledge, which means being a big boss telling everyone what to do is now more of a hindrance than an advantage. It doesn't mean as a boss you lose your job. It means you become more of a servant leader than a dictator. Instead of telling people to hit things, you involve them in conversations. Your job is to inspire, not to motivate. It's a big thing, inspire versus motivate. The motivation comes from them having more autonomy, having more mastery in achieving what they need to achieve. And anyway, at the end of 90 days, you know if a team is delivered because expenses are down at 5%, the churn rate of customers at 5%, the MMR here is up by $20,000. You know it's done or not done. Not achieving this is a fail. Achieving it is Facebook party. Google would expect a 60% pass rate because everything there is a moonshot. Whereas a company that doesn't hit moonshots or achieve moonshots or manage moonshots would expect 100% achieving. So it's a big mind shift, but it works. And it has to happen because the old way, we know what's happening. 50% life cycle of CEOs and companies is the reality of not changing. And if a CEO changes more frequently, you can assume the next CEO will probably change his leadership team. So the people in second line will also, no doubt, be moving jobs more frequently. Good. So if there are any more questions? I'll leave this slide here as well. So the point here is to pose and make you think different. And if we don't think different, then just like the dodo, we run the risk of becoming irrelevant. And the older we get, the harder it is to change. And even when the moonshots become scary because they are too big picture, they're still manageable because we do bite them down into these smaller chunks. How do I put a man on the moon? Well, that's a crazy idea. It's never been done. Sheikh Mohammed's slide, yeah? Impossible is a state of affairs. But then we make it easier for the people below us to understand how to make that happen by creating small objectives, which are 90 days. The beauty of a 90-day OKR is that you are empowering people to see the future. Most people cannot understand a year's target, but they can understand, almost touch and feel 90-day. Okay, so that's where we're at. And I'd like to say thank you. I hope you found it inspiring. I hope it challenged the way you look at how you build a company or lead a team. And we'll share these slides on the system. And with that, I would like to say thank you, shukran, and wish you a wonderful day and rest of the week.